The Council of 12 sat in their elevated chambers, their collective minds buzzing with what they believed was brilliance. High Commander Vrath, a being whose exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, tapped his primary appendage against the metal table. The sound echoed through the war room like a death knell. "So," he began, his voice dripping with the kind of confidence that comes right before spectacular failure. "We are all in agreement then. The human dies tonight." Around the table 11 other heads nodded. Well, the ones that had heads anyway. The collective had representatives from across 4 spiral arms of the galaxy, and not all of them had evolved the same way. Some had tentacles. Some had probability fields instead of bodies. One was technically a sentient gas cloud named Morphix, who communicated through color changes. And right now Morphix was flashing a very enthusiastic shade of crimson. "The Drevik has never failed," said Commander Salas, her crystalline vocal structures creating harmonics that would have shattered human eardrums. "Not once in 7,000 contracts. It is the perfect weapon. Silent, deadly, unstoppable." Vrath allowed himself what his species considered a smile, though to any human observer it would have looked like someone was peeling back layers of nightmare fuel. "And the target is just one human female. A scientist no less. Dr. Kira Vance. She will be eliminated before she can reveal what she knows about the Threshold Project. The Drevik is already on the station," added Tactical Officer Quarren, whose 3 eyes blinked in sequence like a disturbing organic traffic light. "It should reach her quarters within the hour. By morning this problem will be solved, and we can proceed with the invasion timeline." What none of them knew, because the universe has a wicked sense of humor, was that Dr. Kira Vance was not just any human scientist. She was a human scientist who had grown up on the colony world of New Texas, where the unofficial motto was "everything is trying to kill you, so you better learn to kill it first." She had survived Deathstalker wasps the size of dinner plates, gravitational anomalies that could turn your insides into your outsides, and one particularly memorable incident involving a malfunctioning terraforming machine and 17 very angry space bison. More importantly, she had learned something that the Council of 12 had somehow missed in all their intelligence gathering. Humans do not respond well to assassination attempts. In fact, they tend to take it rather personally. The research station Galileo 7 orbited a forgettable moon in a forgettable system, which made it perfect for the kind of research that governments wanted done but did not want anyone to know about. It was late in the station's artificial night cycle, and most of the 200 personnel aboard were either asleep or pretending to work while actually watching entertainment feeds from home. Kira Vance sat in her laboratory surrounded by holograms displaying data that would have given the Council of 12 matching aneurysms if they could have understood even half of it. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and she had that particular look of focused intensity that scientists get when they are 3 cups of coffee past reasonable and have just figured out something important. No, she muttered to herself, waving her hand through one of the displays. "If the quantum harmonics are inverted at this frequency, then the entire Threshold network would collapse. Unless," she paused, her gray eyes widening. Oh, that's what they are planning. Those absolute bastards." She was so engrossed in her revelation that she almost missed the subtle change in the air pressure that indicated her laboratory door had been bypassed. Almost. Growing up on a death world teaches you to pay attention to the little things like sudden drops in pressure that mean something large and probably hostile has entered your personal space. Kira's hand moved slowly toward the tool belt on her desk. To anyone watching it would have looked casual, just a tired scientist reaching for another instrument. But her fingers closed around something that definitely was not standard laboratory equipment. The Drevik materialized from the shadows near the door, and it was, objectively speaking, a nightmare made flesh. It stood nearly 8 feet tall when fully extended, with a skeletal frame that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its head, if you could call it that, was an elongated horror show featuring too many joints and a mouth that opened in ways that violated several laws of biology. 6 arms, each ending in talons that could cut through military-grade hull plating, flexed with anticipation. The species that had bred the Drevik had done so over thousands of years, creating the perfect assassin. It could phase through most forms of matter, see in 17 different spectrums, and had a nervous system so advanced that it could react to threats before they even fully materialized. It had killed warlords, politicians, corporate executives, and at least one entity that existed partially outside of normal spacetime. It had never encountered anything like Kira Vance. "So," Kira said, not turning around, her voice conversational, "I am guessing you are here about the data. Let me guess, the Council sent you. Probably Vrath's idea, right?" He always was a bit dramatic about these things. The Drevik hesitated, which was not something it was programmed to do. Prey was supposed to run or freeze. Prey was not supposed to make casual conversation. It lunged forward with speed that would have been invisible to most species. Its claws came down in an arc designed to sever the human spinal column at the base of the skull. A clean kill, professional. Exactly as specified in the contract. Kira moved, not away. Toward. She spun inside the Drevik's reach, which should have been impossible given the creature's speed and reach advantage. The object in her hand, which turned out to be a modified plasma cutter, came up and drew a line of superheated fury across the Drevik's thorax. The smell of burning alien flesh filled the laboratory as alarms began to wail. The Drevik shrieked, a sound like metal tearing in a vacuum, and backpedaled. This was wrong. This was all wrong. Targets did not move like that. Targets did not have reaction times that fast. Targets did not carry weaponized tools like they were expecting company. Yeah, Kira said, her voice deadly calm as she adjusted her grip on the plasma cutter. That is what I thought. You are tough. I will give you that, but nobody sends a single assassin after someone unless they're either supremely confident or supremely stupid. I am going to go with option 2. The Drevik tried to phase to slip between states of matter and evade, but Kira had already anticipated that. She triggered a device on her belt, and suddenly the room was flooded with a specific type of radiation that played absolute hell with quantum state transitions. The Drevik solidified, trapped in normal space, very much vulnerable. Modulated tachyon field, Kira explained, because even when fighting for her life she was still fundamentally a teacher. I have been working on it for the Threshold project. Turns out it has some interesting side effects, like making it really hard for certain types of matter phasing to work. Funny how things work out. The Drevik had been in thousands of combat situations. It had faced warriors, soldiers, and defenders of every conceivable type. It had always won because it had always been able to adapt, to think, to outmaneuver. But this human was doing something no prey had ever done before. She was lecturing it while simultaneously trying to kill it. Kira pressed her advantage, moving with a grace that spoke of both formal training and hard-won survival instincts. The plasma cutter sang through the air, and the Drevik was forced to defend rather than attack. Its talons sparked against laboratory equipment as it tried to create distance to reassess, to figure out what had gone so catastrophically wrong with this assignment. You know what your problem is? Kira asked, dodging a desperate swipe that would have taken her head off. Your employers made assumptions. They looked at human records, saw we are relatively weak physically, have pretty average sensory capabilities, and assumed we would be easy targets. What they did not factor in is that humans have been the prey species for most of our evolution. We got really good at not dying. She feinted left, and when the Drevik committed to blocking that direction, she went right, the plasma cutter opening another burning wound across its flank. We also got really good at killing things that are trying to kill us. Kind of our whole thing, actually. The Drevik was in trouble, and some part of its engineered brain recognized this fact. It had two choices: continue the attack and likely die, or retreat and face the disgrace of failure. In its entire existence, it had never failed a contract. Pride, it turned out, was not just a human failing. It attacked again, committing everything to one final strike. All 6 arms moved in perfect coordination, creating a web of death that should have been impossible to evade. Mathematics and physics both agreed that there was no way for the human to escape. Kira Vance had never been particularly good at following mathematical predictions. She dropped flat to the floor, the talons passing through the space where her torso had been a microsecond earlier, and triggered the plasma cutter at maximum output directly into the Drevik's central mass. The weapon, designed to cut through starship hulls, went through the assassin's body like a hot knife through butter. The Drevik staggered, its limbs going spastic as critical systems failed. It crashed to the floor, ink spreading in a pool around it, its perfect record of success shattered by a single human scientist with a modified tool and what could only be described as absolutely zero chill. Kira stood over it, breathing hard, plasma cutter still raised. Round them the laboratory was a disaster zone of broken equipment, scorch marks, and alien blood. The alarms continued to wail and she could hear security teams pounding toward her location. The Drevik's eyes, all 6 of them, focused on her face. It tried to speak, its translator unit damaged but still functional enough to convert its thoughts into galactic standard. How? It rasped. You are prey, you are weak. You are nothing. Kira knelt down, careful to stay out of reach of any last-ditch attacks, and smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had spent their whole life being underestimated, and had learned to use that to their advantage. That is where you are wrong, she said softly. Humans are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We do not have the best senses or natural weapons, but we have something better. We have spite. We have stubbornness. And we have a really, really long memory for people who try to kill us. She stood as the security team burst through the door, weapons raised, taking in the scene with expressions of shock. The Drevik, the legendary unkillable assassin, lay broken on the floor. Above it stood a human woman with a plasma cutter and the kind of expression that suggested she was only mildly inconvenienced by the whole affair. "Dr. Vance, are you all right?" the security chief, a Valdorian named Craig, demanded. "Fine," Kira said, wiping alien blood off her cheek. "Though I am going to need a new lab. This one is kind of a mess."
"Oh, and someone should probably contact the Council of 12. Tell them their assassin failed.
"Tell them I know about the Threshold Project and their invasion plans. And tell them," she looked down at the Drevik, which was desperately trying to crawl toward the door, its pride shattered along with several major organs. "Tell them that if they want me dead, they are going to need to send more than one." The Drevik, hearing this, made a sound that its translator rendered as laughter, though it came out more like a death rattle. "They will send armies," it gasped. "They will send fleets. You have doomed yourself, human." Kira's smile widened, and there was something in it that made even the security team take an involuntary step back. "Good," she said. "I was getting bored anyway." Back on the council homeworld, alarms were beginning to sound. The Drevik's biological transmitter had sent its final status update before failing completely. High Commander Viarth stared at the data streaming across his display, his confidence evaporating like water in vacuum. "Impossible," he whispered. "The Drevik is down," confirmed Commander Salis, her harmonic voice for once lacking its usual certainty. "The human lives. She defeated it in single combat." Around the table, the Council of 12 sat in stunned silence. Morphix had turned a shade of gray that indicated extreme distress. Tactical Officer Korn's three eyes were all focused on the same point, a sign of intense concentration or, in this case, dawning horror. "What do we do?" asked one of the junior members, a being whose name was mostly clicks and whistles. Ray straightened, his exoskeleton creaking. Pride demanded action. Logic suggested caution. Unfortunately for everyone involved, Pride won. "We proceed with the plan," he said. "But we increase the threat assessment. Substantially." "How substantially?" Salis asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer and did not like it one bit. "Send everything," Vrith commanded. "If one human can defeat the Drevik, then we treat this as a military engagement. I want a strike team on that station within 6 rotations. 20 of our best warriors. Heavy weapons. No chance." What Wreath did not realize, and what would become painfully clear in the hours and days to come, was that he had just made the second worst decision of his entire military career. The first worst decision had been sending the Drethik in the first place, because now Kira Vance was not just aware of the threat. She was prepared, and a prepared human, as the galaxy was about to learn, was exponentially more dangerous than an ignorant one. The news of the Drevik's defeat spread through the galactic intelligence networks like wildfire through a dry forest. Within hours, every major power, criminal syndicate, and mercenary guild knew that the impossible had happened. The legendary assassin, undefeated in 7,000 contracts, had been taken down by a single human scientist, armed with what amounted to a fancy blowtorch. The reactions varied. Some species laughed, some pondered the implications. The smart ones started revising their assessment of humanity upward, way upward. The Council of 12, however, had committed to a course of action, and like many governing bodies throughout history, they were now trapped by their own momentum and pride. Admitting they had made a mistake would have been politically devastating, so instead they doubled down, which is always the best strategy when you have already made one catastrophically bad decision. High Commander Wreath stood in the Tactical Operations Center, watching as his strike team prepared for deployment. 20 of the collective's finest warriors, each one a veteran of a dozen campaigns, each one equipped with enough firepower to level a small city. They wore armor that could shrug off plasma fire, carried weapons that could punch through starship hulls, and had been briefed extensively on human physiology and psychology. "Remember," Bruth told them via the communication link, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "The target is dangerous but ultimately fragile. Human bone structure is weak. Their organs are poorly protected. They require constant oxygen intake. Disrupt any of these factors, and they fail rapidly." The strike team leader, a massive creature named Thorik, whose species had evolved on a high-gravity world and looked like someone had crossed a bear with a tank, nodded confidently. "Understood, High Commander. We will not underestimate the target as the Drevik apparently did, but make no mistake. 20 warriors against 1 human. This will be over quickly. Famous last words. As it turned out, on Research Station Galileo 7, Kira Vance was having what might charitably be called a productive evening. After the medical team had cleared her, after security had finished documenting the crime scene that used to be her laboratory, and after she had endured approximately 47 status meetings with increasingly panicked station administrators, she had finally been allowed to return to what remained of her quarters. She did not sleep. Sleep was for people who were not being actively hunted by an interstellar government, with apparently unlimited resources and a terminal case of bad decision-making. Instead, her quarters now looked less like living space and more like a combination armory, chemistry lab and engineering workshop. The station's quartermaster, a pragmatic Gleesian named Torv, who had decided that keeping Kira alive was preferable to following regulations, had quietly provided access to materials that were definitely not approved for civilian use. So let me get this straight, her colleague Marcus Webb said, standing in her doorway with an expression of profound disbelief. Marcus was a xenobiologist, lanky and perpetually disheveled, and had been Kira's friend for 3 years. The council knows you are alive. They know you defeated their super assassin, and instead of running, hiding, or literally anything sensible, you are building booby traps. Improvised defensive measures, Kira corrected, carefully mixing 2 compounds that probably should not have been in the same room together, let alone the same container. And yes, running would just delay the inevitable. They have faster ships. They have more resources. They would find me eventually. So your plan is to what? Fight an entire alien empire by yourself? Kira looked up and Marcus was disturbed to see that she was smiling. Not by myself. I have got you right. I study alien gut bacteria, Kira. I am not exactly combat ready. You also have a doctorate in biochemistry and, if I remember correctly, you grew up on New Glasgow, which had those lovely acid-spitting plants everywhere. So you know about hostile environments and biological warfare. She turned back to her work. Besides, I am not planning to fight an empire, just whoever they send next. One problem at a time. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, which made it stick up at even more ridiculous angles. You know this is insane, right? Like, clinically, certifiably insane. Probably, Kira agreed cheerfully. But here is the thing, Marcus. They sent the Drevik to kill me quietly. Now they know that failed. So what do they send next? They will overcorrect. They will send overwhelming force because they are embarrassed. And overwhelming force means loud, visible, and tactically predictable. How is that better? Because loud and visible means I know they are coming, and predictable means I can plan for it. She held up a small device that looked innocent but probably was not. They think humans are weak because we do not have natural armor or claws or venom. What they do not understand is that we do not need those things. We have brains, we have tools, and we have a really vindictive streak when someone tries to kill us. As if on cue, the station's alert system chimed. Not the regular alarm, but the specific tone that meant incoming ships with hostile intent. Marcus and Kira exchanged glances. That was fast, Marcus said. They are embarrassed, Kira repeated. Embarrassed people make mistakes. Come on. We have about 30 minutes before they board, and I need your help setting up a few surprises. In the cold vacuum between the station and the approaching assault ship, Thorak reviewed his team's deployment plan one final time. The station had minimal defenses. Its security force was designed to handle drunk researchers and the occasional equipment malfunction, not military-grade assault. The plan was simple: breach the hull at 3 points, sweep through the station in coordinated teams, eliminate the target, extract data on the Threshold project, and withdraw before any reinforcements could arrive. It was a good plan. Thorough. Professional. The kind of plan that worked 99 times out of 100. This was going to be the one. The assault teams breached simultaneously, cutting through the hull with precision and speed. Thorak's team came through in Habitation Section 7, just 2 corridors away from Dr. Vance's quarters. They moved in perfect formation, weapons raised, scanning for threats. The corridor was empty. Silent. Too silent. Something is wrong, muttered Skrell, Thorak's second in command. Skrell was a Vexian species known for their paranoia, which meant when Skrell said something felt wrong, smart people listened. Maintain formation, Thorak ordered. Target is 2 junctions ahead. Stay alert. They advanced cautiously. The corridor looked normal. Standard station construction. Beige walls. Harsh lighting. Nothing unusual. Then the floor exploded. Well, not exploded exactly, but 6 of Thorak's warriors suddenly found themselves falling through what had been solid deck plating a moment before. tumbling down into the maintenance level below where they landed in a substance that Kira had helpfully labeled in her notes as experimental adhesive compound. Do not touch. The warriors struggled, but the more they moved, the more entangled they became. Their weapons were useless, stuck fast to their arms, which were stuck fast to their torsos, which were stuck fast to the floor. What? In the void? Thorax stared at the hole in disbelief. That would be a structural integrity field modulation combined with a timed release, said a voice from a speaker in the ceiling. Kira's voice, calm and educational. The adhesive should hold for about 6 hours. Do not worry, it is non-toxic. Probably. I did not exactly have time for full safety testing. Open fire on the speakers, Thorak commanded. His warriors complied. Plasma bolts tearing through the ceiling, destroying speakers and lighting fixtures. But Kira's voice continued, clearly being broadcast from multiple sources throughout the section. Oh, and I should mention that plasma weapons in enclosed spaces tend to create a lot of heat. You might want to check your suit's thermal regulators. Just a thought. Thorak checked his readouts and cursed in 17 different languages. The ambient temperature in the corridor was climbing rapidly. The plasma fire had ignited something probably deliberately placed, and now the entire section was turning into an oven. Fall back, he ordered. Regroup with teams 2 and 3. Team 2, at that moment, was having its own problems. They had encountered what appeared to be a standard automated maintenance drone, the kind that fixed minor hull breaches and cleaned air filters. These drones were approximately as threatening as a particularly assertive Roomba. At least, they usually were. The drone that Team 2 encountered had been modified extensively. Marcus Webb, it turned out, really did know a lot about biochemistry, and he had spent a very productive 20 minutes teaching Kira about some fascinating compounds he had isolated from his research specimens, compounds that, when aerosolized, cause temporary paralysis in most carbon-based life forms. The modified drone sprayed its contents with enthusiastic efficiency. 10 warriors collapsed, their nervous systems temporarily offline, leaving them very much alive but very much unable to move, fight, or do anything except lie there and reconsider their career choices. Team 3 made it the furthest. They actually reached Dr. Vance's quarters, which they breached with overwhelming force, ready for anything, except for the empty room filled with holographic projectors displaying a looping message. Kira's face, life-sized, smiled at them. "Hey," the recording said. "If you are seeing this, congratulations, you made it through the first layer of defenses. Your prize is that you get to experience the second layer. In approximately 5 seconds, the gravity in this room will increase to 4 times galactic standard. I tested it earlier. It is really quite impressive. Do try not to break anything important, like your spine." The gravity shifted. Warriors designed for standard Earth-like gravity suddenly weighed 4 times as much. Armor that had been protective became crushing. They collapsed under their own weight, unable to stand, unable to retreat, tinned like insects under glass. Thorak, listening to the chaos on all 3 team channels, felt something he had not experienced in decades of combat. Fear, not for his life but fear that he had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of this engagement. "All teams fall back to the breach points," he ordered. "We are withdrawing. That would be inadvisable." Kira's voice came again, and this time she sounded almost sympathetic. "I kind of welded your breaching points shut while you were busy with the traps. Sorry. Well, not really sorry, but I thought I should at least pretend to be polite." Thorak looked at his remaining warriors. Out of 20, only 7 were still combat capable. 7 warriors trapped in a station, hunted by a single human who apparently had a doctorate in applied violence. "This is not warfare," Skrell said quietly. "This is a game. She is toying with us." "Then we change the rules," Thorak growled. "Activate the station's emergency systems. Vent the atmosphere in all sections. If we cannot fight her directly, we will force her into a controlled environment." It was a brutal tactic, but effective. Or it would have been, if Kira had not anticipated exactly this response. "Yeah, about that," her voice came through again. "I maybe locked out the emergency systems about an hour ago. Station Administrator Kelvin is really annoyed with me about it, but in my defense I did correctly predict you would try something like this, so I feel pretty justified in my paranoia." Thorak made a decision. Screw the mission. Screw the target. Set charges on the reactor core. If we cannot kill her, we will destroy the entire station. This, finally, got a reaction from Kira. The calm educational tone vanished, replaced by something sharp and dangerous. "He will not touch that reactor. Watch us, human." 3 of Thorak's warriors moved toward the engineering section carrying demolition charges. They made it 2 corridors before they encountered Kira Vance herself standing in the middle of the hallway, holding what looked like a jury-rig rifle built from parts of at least 6 different weapons. "Final warning," she said. "Turn around." The warriors laughed. 3 of them against 1 unarmored human. The odds were, from any reasonable perspective, overwhelmingly in their favor. They charged. What happened next would be analyzed in military academies across the galaxy for years to come. Kira moved like water, like smoke, like something that existed in the spaces between moments. The improvised rifle fired rounds that were part plasma, part railgun, and entirely devastating. The first warrior went down with a smoking hole through his chest plate. The second lost an arm. The third tried to grab her and found himself on the floor with his own combat knife buried in his neck. Thorak, watching through his team's helmet cameras, felt his blood run cold. This was not a scientist defending herself. This was a predator, and his warriors were the prey. "Retreat," he whispered, all his confidence gone. "Retreat now." The remaining warriors scrambled back toward the sealed breach points, desperate to cut their way out. Kira let them go, more concerned with the warriors she had incapacitated. She moved through the station, checking each trap, each fallen enemy, methodically ensuring none of them were going to cause more problems. When she found Thorak and his last 2 warriors trying to cut through the hull, she did not shoot. She just stood there, her improvised weapon pointed at them, waiting. Thorak turned slowly, his massive frame still intimidating despite everything. "You have made a powerful enemy today, human." "I had a powerful enemy yesterday," Kira corrected. "Today I just proved they sent amateurs to do an impossible job." She gestured with her weapon. "Drop your gear. All of it. Then sit down with your hands visible. And if we refuse," Kira's smile was colder than the vacuum outside, "then I demonstrate why humans evolved as pursuit predators. You can run, Thorak. I know your name, by the way. Got it from your team's communications. You can run, but this station has limited space. I know every corridor, and I do not get tired easily. How long do you think you would last?" Thorak looked into her gray eyes and saw something that made him finally understand what the Drevik must have felt in its last moments. This was not a weak species. This was not prey. This was something that had clawed its way up from the bottom of the food chain through sheer stubbornness and spite, and had learned every dirty trick necessary to survive along the way. He dropped his weapons. By the time station security arrived, Kira had 19 alien warriors restrained, 3 dead, and 1 very detailed report written up about Council of 12 operations, invasion plans, and the Threshold Project. She transmitted it all to Earth's diplomatic corps, to the Federation Council, to every major news outlet she could find, and to several organizations whose official stance was that they definitely were not spy agencies, but everyone knew better. The Council of 12's secret invasion plan was now the worst-kept secret in the galaxy. On the Council homeworld, High Commander Vrath stared at the incoming messages, at the diplomatic backlash, at the complete collapse of his carefully constructed strategy. Morphix had turned a color that indicated acute depression. Commander Salis had stopped emitting any harmonics at all. "Perhaps," suggested Tactical Officer Quorn carefully, "we should consider negotiation rather than elimination." Vrath wanted to argue, wanted to send more warriors, wanted to salvage something from this disaster. But he was not stupid, just prideful, and even pride has limits. "Contact the human," he said finally, each word tasting like defeat. "Arrange a meeting. If Dr. Vance wants to survive, she will need allies, and the Council needs damage control. Perhaps we can find mutual benefit." Back on Galileo 7, Kira sat in what remained of her quarters, Marcus beside her, both of them too exhausted to move. "So," Marcus said eventually, "that was fun." Kira laughed, the sound edged with hysteria and relief. "Oh yeah, loads of fun. Want to help me clean up before the diplomats arrive? I am pretty sure leaving paralyzed aliens in the corridors violates at least 6 station regulations." "Kira, yeah? Next time someone tries to kill you, can you maybe just run away like a normal person?" She considered this seriously for a moment, then shook her head. Where would be the fun in that? And somewhere, in the depths of space, other species listening to the broadcast began to reassess their assumptions about humanity. They had thought humans were weak, fragile, easy targets. Dr. Kira Vance had just taught them a very expensive lesson about the difference between weak and unarmed. The galaxy was going to have to recalculate everything, and honestly, that seemed only fair.